to satsang. Let's start with a few minutes of quiet meditation together. So find a position that you can sit in comfortably, ideally without moving or fidgeting. Make sure your mobile is off or on silent. And then allow the eyes to close gently. And as the eyes close, shutting off our visual field, allow yourself to pull the other senses in as well. So the sense of sound, the sense of touch, all of these other senses, bring them in as well. So it's not about dulling them or shutting them off, but instead of having them be hyper alert to the world around us, draw them in to the world inside. Take a moment and allow yourself to fully arrive right here, right now. Not just with the body, but allow the mind, the attention, the awareness, draw it in to right here, right now, this breath. See how much of your awareness can be merged with this breath. If the mind gets distracted, just bring it back. Keep that awareness that focus. Keep it merged fully into this breath. Right here, right now. The noises in the world are always on. The distractions of the world are always on. But allow your attention to merge with your breath. in this moment. As you inhale, realize that you're breathing in not just oxygen, but you're breathing in the sacred energy of this sacred land. You're breathing in the air that blows off the heights of the Himalayas, blows across the waters of Mother Ganga. The air that has been here for thousands of years, that's been inhaled and exhaled by the saints and the sages, the yogis and the rishis. It's not just oxygen. It's divine energy. Breathe it in. And as you breathe it in, feel that breath move throughout the being, touching, awakening, illuminating all of the cells of the being. As you breathe it in, notice if there are parts of your being where the breath doesn't flow easily, places of tightness or constriction. Breathe deeper into those areas, carrying this sacred energy of light and transformation into and through the entire being. As you exhale, let go of the energy that's holding you back. The energy that's old, constricting, an illusion. Breathe that energy out, energy of anger and pain, attachments and expectations, energy of identity. Just breathe it out on the exhalations and create even more space to breathe in the energy of awakening, the energy of light. Gently bring the palms together at chest level in Namaste and rub the palms of your hands gently against each other. Press the palms into your closed eyes. Open your eyes and lower your hands. Welcome again to satsang. We'll start as always with a question that's come in advance, and then okay, are they ready? Do they have a question? Okay. So we have our advanced question here in person. Yes.
Okay. So my question is, and I just want to be very clear.
Okay. Great.
This will not, or maybe cannot necessarily happen. But if you were to someday come to a realization that everything you have come to believe is not the truth.
Yes. So he said, this may not ever happen, maybe it couldn't ever happen, but if you ever came to the realization that everything you ever believed was not true, what would you do? Well, fortunately for you in asking the question, and fortunately for me of having had the experience, I have had that happen to me. It happened to me the first time I met Puja Swamiji, actually. And I'm going to share the very personal experience of being in his presence for the first time. And I'm going to share it from my religious, spiritual background as well as from that experience. Don't worry if your religious, spiritual background is different. Remember that where we're going with this is that moment of realizing everything I ever thought, everything I was ever taught is wrong. So, without going into the story of how I came to India and all of that, which is a different story, what's important to mention is that I was not on a spiritual quest or any conscious spiritual quest. I wish I had been on one. I might have gotten here before I was 25, but I wasn't. And what that also means is I didn't have any awareness of the need to look for, to find a spiritual guru, a guide. I was not someone who read about spiritual gurus or anything like that. I found myself in the presence of Puja Swamiji because I wanted to stay at this ashram. And he's the president of the ashram. And at that time, in order to stay here, I needed his permission. And so I walked into the room, having been told I was going to meet the president of the ashram. Now, coming from the world I came from, I was expecting a man in a suit and tie with a briefcase and a desk to whom I would present my case and who would hopefully grant me the right to occupy one of the rooms here. I had no idea I was about to step foot into the presence of an enlightened master, that I was about to be in the presence of one of India's most revered spiritual leaders. As I'm walking into his room, 50 feet from getting there, the man who's bringing me is trying to give me this crash course in being in the presence of the guru, as he's got me by the hand and he's bringing me in to meet him. And when we get there, you will do pranam, he says. What is pranam, I say. You'll bow down, and he starts to try to describe it to me. I say, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to just do whatever you do. I'm very good at following. I'm a very obedient person. You just do it, I will follow. We get there. It's a room full of people. Puja Swamiji was giving open darshan. The room was full. And I had the awareness within a couple of minutes of entering that room that I was in the presence of a being who was divine. Now, I was raised in the Jewish tradition, and in the Jewish tradition, the concept of divinity in form is something that is considered sacrilege. Now, in the years that I've been here and I've had the opportunity to meet enlightened, incredible Jewish leaders and teachers, you realize, of course, that the way, and this is true about all of our religions, that the way that it's given to us in most of our churches and synagogues and whatnot by the people who happen to be teaching on that level is a very watered down version, a very kind of black and white version, not really the full enlightened version of any of our religions. But nonetheless, the way that I had been taught Judaism is God does not take form. We do not envision, conceive of, worship, think about, pray to God in any form. And to do so is not just wrong, but it's actually sacrilege. In the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not worship false idols in form. Animate, inanimate, living and breathing, made of stone or gold, either way, God does not take form. And as a non-religious 25-year-old, I had never had any place to question that. Okay, God doesn't take form. Fine. What movie are we going to see tonight? That was sort of about as concerned as I was about religious teachings. Here I was in a room with a being who I knew was an embodiment of the divine. Now, it wasn't as though all of the divine, all of God from all over the universe had left all of the places God was and had simply coalesced in the being of this saint in front of me. It wasn't that. It wasn't that he was the only thing that was divine. It was that there was a quality of being that was qualitatively different about this being than any being in whose presence I'd ever been. And that qualitative difference had to do specifically with how he embodied and transmitted divinity. So I knew I'm in the presence of the divine. And it didn't matter that I had spent 25 years being told that that doesn't happen, can't happen. I was having an experience that belied everything I had ever been taught. And what it made me realize in that moment was, well, if they were wrong about God, maybe everything I've been told isn't true. I mean, if you take something as fundamental as God, and you say, well, everything I've been taught about it is now being belied by an experience I'm having. Maybe it's only a matter of time before everything I was taught gets undone by an experience I have. And it was for me the most extraordinary moment because it literally wiped my slate clean. I knew in that moment, I don't know anything. There is nothing I was taught by my family, in the synagogue, at Stanford, by any place I'd ever been, by anyone I'd ever known, that I could actually count on as fact if what I'd been told about God wasn't right. And so in that moment I realized nothing I know can be true. And it was exquisite actually, because it made that slate empty. Now I realize when you asked it, that you've asked it from a place of perhaps not yet touching the exquisiteness of that experience. But realize that the universe clears something away in order to make space for something better. And if you've had a truth that was your truth, whether you're 8 or 18 or 28 or 80, if the universe has come in and cleared that away, it has done so in order to make room for something else. But there will be a time in which you may feel uncomfortably empty. If I can't count on what I've been told, if I can't count on what I believed, I'm sinking into a void of nothingness. And that void only feels like nothing until you allow yourself to sink with such faith that you realize it's actually everything you're sinking into, not nothing. There's a beautiful parable that I love of a man who's holding on to a rope for dear life. And suddenly he hears this angelic voice in his head that says, let go. And he says, I can't let go. I'm going to plummet to my death if I let go. And the angel says, well, then let go just with one finger. And he's scared because when you're holding on for dear life, you really would like to do so with all 10 fingers. But the voice was so beautiful that he lets go with one finger. And slowly, slowly, this angel convinces him to let go with 9 of his 10 fingers. One finger at a time. And now she comes and he's holding on to this rope for dear life with only one finger. And she says, let go. And he says, no more now. I trusted you up to 9 fingers. But if I let go, I will plummet to my death. I will plummet into that emptiness. But her voice is so sweet and so soothing, and it inspires such faith in him that as she keeps coaxing him, he lets go. Convinced, now I'm going to plummet to my death. But he doesn't. And he's confused, and he looks down and realizes he's been standing on solid earth the whole time. And what I love about that parable is we think that we're holding on to that truth for dear life. We've all got it. We've all got our sets of truths. If I say to you, what do you know for sure? Some of it's helpful, some of it's not helpful. Some of it may be that I am worthless and horrible. Okay, not helpful. But nonetheless, it's a piece of illusory truth that a lot of us hold on to with dear life. What do you know for sure? That I can't trust anyone. Again, not so helpful. But something a lot of us hold on to for dear life. A lot of us have these truths. Maybe it's that this is the only one I can trust. Maybe it's that marriage is forever, that love is forever, that someone you love isn't going to betray you. Trust is forever. Whatever it may be. Maybe it's that God always takes care of me. We have these truths, and we hold on to them for dear life. And then when life happens, we end up having to let go because something has just undone a truth. It no longer can be true. And we then find ourselves in this situation. As you said, well, everything you thought isn't true. Well, that's all 10 fingers off the rope. That's a plummeting into the void experience. There is nothing I can hold on to anymore because nothing I knew is true. But that's the time when you realize, oh wait, I didn't need to be holding on to that truth. I'm on solid ground. There's a universe that is supporting you. There's an existence, there's a wisdom in existence that is supporting you, even if everything you've been told is a lie. What it means is that now you get to realize the truth of that earth which is supporting you, of that ground which is supporting you, of that self which is supporting you, that doesn't need other people's truths in order to stay afloat. It throws you into a situation of, okay, nothing I ever thought is true. I'm going to plummet into the void, which means that the only truth I know is the truth of the self with which, in which, as which, I'm plummeting. And that's the truth that you're supposed to find in your life anyway. And here you are, very young, already being thrown into a situation of having to find it. So it may come with what feels like temporary pain, but that pain is clearing away space for something very beautiful. And when you find what you can trust, that's yours forever. Because that's your truth. And that's the truth of the self. But not a lowercase s self, not a self in relation to others who are telling me things I'm supposed to believe. But it's the capital S self. It's the truth of who you are, that even if every single person in the world never tells you anything true again, even if nobody else in the world ever does something you can depend on, that truth of the self is the truth that we live in. And you're actually very blessed. I know it may not feel like that at the moment, but you're very blessed to be thrown into this at such a young age. Because most people don't discover that until much later in life. But your challenge is going to be not to get bitter. Because it's very easy to say, I can't trust. You can trust. But you just have to choose what to trust. And what you trust is the self. What you trust is that experience of the true self. And your connection to God, whatever that means to you. There's a beautiful line in the prayers we chant here every morning that says, Tu akale nahi pyare, Ram tere saath mein. And it means, my dear, you are never alone. God is always with you. And that's the opportunity. And again, you're young. You're young to be thrown into the situation of trusting God, finding God. But it's actually a beautiful opportunity. It doesn't matter if you don't call it God or think about it as God. If you think about it as yourself, your true self, your divine self, your ultimate self, that's also great. But just know that that true ultimate self is connected to something much greater and bigger. Because otherwise it feels like the world is on your shoulders. So it's that ultimate self, that supreme self, that actually is connected to the greater self. Like any of these electrical appliances plugged into the wall, right? So the appliance is there. It's full in itself. And it actually gets the electricity from the main grid. So the blender doesn't actually have to generate its own electricity, or the mic, or the fan, or the light. It just has to be plugged in. And you're going to find in your life how to get plugged in, how to connect. But you're going to make it, and you're going to make it beautifully. And there's going to be a time when you look back and you say, thank God that happened, because that was the beginning of everything that really is true. True for you. That capital T truth. Not just what you're supposed to believe, but the real truth. Are there other questions? Yes. And then here. Yes. First her and then you.
So in our spiritual practice, we have to do acceptance, fully accepting and surrender ourselves.
Yes.
But on the other hand, we also want to be ambitious. So how do we find this balance?
Acceptance and ambition. It's like that beautiful saying, right, that says, God, grant me the courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. So ambition is to become, unfold as, step into the highest, truest experience of yourself. It's not a version of yourself because you don't have lots of versions. You've got one self. But you have different ways of experiencing that, different angles of looking at that, of embracing that, of embodying that, of manifesting that. So ambition as in, okay, God, today, no anger. Great ambition. No jealousy. No negativity, God. Okay, and at the end of the day, you realize that you made it through breakfast. So you accept. Okay, God. So there was a little more anger today than I would have liked. Little more jealousy today than I would have liked. Tomorrow, no anger. No jealousy. Tomorrow, at least I'm going to make it through lunch. So ambition is the energy to co-create our existence. Acceptance is of that which we have no control over. So either something that's already happened, the temper tantrum I threw at 8 o'clock this morning, I no longer have any control over it. It's in the past. Cannot rewind history, unfortunately. But you do have control over tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And so the ambition is to co-create tomorrow in a way that is more awake, more in line, more true, more light, more presence. The acceptance is of that over which I don't have control. So whether it's because it's the past, whether it's other people. I have ambition to love as much as I can, to love as fully as I can, to love as unconditionally as I can. I have to accept the fact that not everybody's going to love me back. I have no control over that. I only have control over my ability to express love. No control over how anybody's going to respond to that. I have no control over the universe. You plant your seeds, and then the universe happens. Sometimes the seeds sprout. The ambition leads us to study about it, to get the best organic seeds, to plant them in the right soil, to water them, to put them in the right place with the right sunlight. But the acceptance then is, it's going to sprout and grow. Not in your hands. So you have to accept. So this is how they merge. Ambition for everything that is my part, my duty, my dharma. I have an ambition to fulfill my dharma, to fulfill my duty. I have an ambition to be as selfless as I can, to be as clear a vehicle and vessel in God's hands as I possibly can. I have an ambition to be as free of ego, free of ignorance as I can, and an acceptance of the trajectory that my life has taken up to this moment that may have led me to have ego or ignorance or these things. And an acceptance of all of that over which I don't have any control. So that's the intersection. And lastly, create an ambition to be more accepting. Yes. And then you.
Would you say that follow up on that, would you say that the ambition is the study and the acceptance is the practice?
She asked, is ambition the study and acceptance the practice? I wouldn't say that, because I would think of ambition as an energy of movement, an acceptance, an energy of surrender. So think of ambition as the inhalation. I'm going to fill myself, I'm going to take in that energy. And acceptance is the exhalation. Nothing more you can do with that breath other than let it out. The longer you hold it in, the sicker you're going to get. Yeah. Yes.
How do you know what you truly, authentically want?
How do we know what we truly and authentically want? We ask ourselves. But we ask ourselves honestly. And here's what it might look like. Come here. Come here. Sit with me. Okay. So this is an exercise of great courage. So thank you for doing this. Here's what it looks like. I'm going to give you an example first, and then we're going to take you. Okay? So if you say to most people, what do you want? And you don't even say necessarily what's your bottom line thing, but what do you want? You'll get everything ranging from, I want a better job, I want a romantic partner, I want a bigger house. You then ask, okay, assume you got it, then what? Then what? Then what? So, do you feel comfortable trying this with me? Thank you. Takes a lot of courage, so thank you. So, if I said to you, what do you want? What would you say?
I don't know.
Well, that's okay. Give me one thing, anything you want. Doesn't have to be your core, deepest want. Just right now, if I were a genie and I came out of the bottle, but you only had 60 seconds because I was going to go back in 60 seconds.
To feel completely healthy all the time.
Fantastic. Okay. So let's say done. You feel completely healthy all the time. What would that give you? Close your eyes and imagine yourself feeling completely healthy all the time. What is the felt sense of that? How do you feel in your heart when you're healthy? The body feels healthy, but you're not the body. So how does the deep you feel when you're healthy all the time?
Free to do what I want without hindrance.
Great. Free. Freedom. it takes most people anywhere between 10 and 30 steps to get there. You watched her just do it in one. Freedom. Freedom. If she weren't already quite so deep, and she had begun by saying that what she wanted, let's say, was a lot of money, and you then ask, okay, imagine you've got a lot of money. Then what? Well, then I can buy whatever I want. And, okay, imagine you can buy whatever you want. Then what? Well, then I will feel happy. Imagine you feel happy. Then what? And you keep going. And what you find ultimately is at the core, actually our highest and deepest yearning is for freedom. It isn't actually even happiness. Most of us think of happiness as the core goal, but we're only happy when we are free. So, how many of you are happy to be sitting in this room right now? Raise your hand. Great, well, thank you. Now, imagine that I say, lock those doors, nobody can leave. And you have no idea how long those doors are going to stay locked. But suddenly my face changes and I start to look very authoritarian, terrifying. And I say, nobody's getting out of here. Now, how many of you are happy to be here? A significantly smaller percentage. Happiness is contingent upon freedom. Freedom is actually the core of what we want. Now, the beautiful thing about knowing that, and even if we take happiness, let's even take them both, it actually makes things very simple. Because what we know is that I don't want a superficial level happiness, because then I have to keep refilling it, and then I'm not free. If I'm only happy lying on a beach in Tahiti, well, it's not a very full experience of happiness. It's certainly not a free experience of happiness, because then I'm only able to live on a bikini in Tahiti, which has significantly limited my freedom. If I'm only able to be happy when everyone around me is doing what I want, treating me the way that I want, acting the way that I want, it's not a very free experience of happiness. This is where stress builds up. This is where arguments in relationships build up. You better do this. Why? It's for your own good. No, it's not. It's for you. Whenever we tell people it's for your own good, what it really means is it is too anxiety-producing for me when you don't do that. Therefore, I need you to do that. I'm going to convince you it's for your own good. But really, it's because I can't manage my internal anxiety when you are not acting in the way I want you to. Well, that's not free. So if what we really want is freedom, spiritual freedom, and a joy and a happiness that doesn't go up and down based on what people in the world are doing, what it means is that all of the things that we think we want, like that job, to go to that university, that house, that boy, that girl, that body type, that skin color, that hair type. Suddenly, the need for all of that dissipates. It doesn't mean we don't have preferences, but it means we realize ultimately what our core want is, and that our attachment to those preferences is actually pulling away our core freedom. If I'm dependent on how you act or how you speak to me for my happiness, I'm not free. If my freedom is my highest goal, then I better figure out how to be in peace regardless of what you do. How to be in peace regardless of how you talk to me. How to be in peace regardless of whether I'm in a bikini in Tahiti or in a suit and tie on a subway in Manhattan. That's freedom. And so what that means is that the choices we make in life are choices in favor of freedom. But freedom, remember, is not a license to decadence. That's not free. We think of it as freedom. We think of rebellion and hedonism and decadence and all of that as freedom, but it actually isn't, because what I'm doing is I'm rebelling against, reacting against rules and norms and dharma and sanskaras and whatever, which means I'm just as stuck. Whether I'm doing what they say or I'm doing the opposite of what they say. Either way, what I'm doing is due to what they say. So freedom to do whatever you want, when that's your highest want, what that means is that you need to figure out how to cultivate the courage within you to do that. May God bless you with always a healthy body. But illness comes. Injuries come. It's part of the package deal of having a body that's made of matter that degenerates. And that's subject to all kinds of rules of nature and mosquitoes and bad water and all sorts of other laws of nature and how they impact us. Gravity. How it impacts us. The real freedom is freedom on the inside. And that freedom is going to be yours regardless of the health of the body. Because otherwise you find yourself scared all the time about every pain, every illness, everything like that. Okay? And just because they're young and clearly also thinking about, well, what do I want to do? What path do I want to walk? Realize that your highest freedom comes when you're able to really serve as an instrument of the divine. That it's not about your attachment to, I have to make this much money, I have to have that title, I have to be better than this guy, I have to achieve that. When your aim is, how can I connect myself to the truth of myself, to that experience of the divine, I then become a tool in the divine's hands. And you will be used. You will be utilized in an extraordinarily beautiful way that neither of us knows. But it will be a way in which you experience freedom inside, because that divine is flowing through you, and a way in which you're able to actually also be of a ripple impact benefit to those in the world. But we only know that when we're anchored and grounded, because that's the only way when that flow flows through us. Otherwise, it's all about the mind. It's all about the ego. It's all about I should be doing this, shouldn't be doing that. This is beneath me. That's my potential. This is... And that's where we get lost. So we connect. And in that connection, we find courage to step into the world, the full, blossomed, open-petaled flower that we are, and to give that fragrance to the world. Good. Yes, of course. Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. And we'll see you tomorrow.